Urban legends are the stories that live in the space between reality and fiction, passed from person to person, evolving as they go, a bit like Chinese whispers. In the old days, they'd start as whispered fireside tales, told in the dark where a spooky story really comes into its own. In more modern times, when it comes to video games, they emerge on the internet where players swap stories about strange encounters and eerie events. It's a bit less common now, but when New Vegas came out, it was pretty much the perfect time for these sorts of stories to spread. Throughout New Vegas's life cycle from the very start to the present day, urban legends have taken on a life of their own, spreading across forums, message boards and comment sections. These stories, sometimes grounded in bugs or glitches, other times in pure speculation, are a lot of fun to read. In curating these stories, I've been exploring the dusty corners of the internet, gathering tales from, in some cases, long forgotten forum posts, threads buried deep in Reddit, and conversations lost in the chaos of decade-old gaming spaces. And then there are some that are more recent too. Some of the older stories and legends are more well known now, having gained traction as they spread across platforms, while others remain obscure, hidden gems that you might not have heard of. These lesser known legends often come from individual players sharing their own bizarre experiences, personal encounters that never quite made the rounds. All of these stories to me fit the urban legend bracket. There's not always evidence, so some of them rely on testimony from players, and they're all quirky and fun. So, let's begin. In 2011, a New Vegas player reported a really bizarre story involving the beloved companion EDE, which I am dubbing the lethal EDE or hostile EDE glitch. The player shared their unsettling experience, starting innocuously with what seemed like a typical stealth bug, the caution status randomly appearing as they crept through towns and NCR camps, though there wasn't an enemy in sight. It felt odd, and given that they had the Wild Wasteland perk, the player thought it might just be another strange addition in the game's offbeat mode, but things quickly spiraled. The strange events began when EDE, the normally reliable and helpful companion, simply vanished during a firefight, disappearing mid-battle without explanation. Days passed in-game, and then 3 in-game weeks later, a message appeared saying EDE had returned to Prim. Overjoyed, the player made their way back to retrieve the loyal iBot. But when they entered the building, instead of EDE's familiar reassuring tone, they saw a red dot on their compass. EDE was hostile. No matter what the player did, EDE immediately attacked, forcing them to put down their companion, hoping that killing EDE would reset the glitch. Instead, the issue morphed. Now with a new companion, random caution statuses still appeared without reason. Even more bizarrely, the new ally would randomly taunt empty spaces or raise weapons as if an invisible enemy was lurking nearby. The player noted how deeply unsettling it felt, as if some trace of this ghost-like, hostile EDE's presence haunted the Mojave, invisible but ever watchful. Definitely spooky. For our next story, we're going to hear about a very strange monster attack on a well-known New Vegas settlement. Also in 2011, a player recounted an unsettling encounter with an alpha male deathclaw, usually a creature reserved for the most treacherous parts of the wasteland. They left Goodsprings and headed to Sloan to help fix the generator and check on Snuffles, Sloan's beloved mole rat. But things quickly took an ominous turn. As the player approached Sloan, their hidden status flickered wildly between caution and danger. Sounds quite similar to the last story, but believe me, this is definitely a different phenomenon. No enemies were visible, adding a sense of mounting dread. Curious but cautious, the player entered a nearby shack, hoping that whatever was causing the glitch would reset. But stepping outside again, they came face to face with their worst nightmare. An alpha male deathclaw had spawned in the heart of Sloan. Of course, as you'd expect, the deathclaw unleashed its fury. Snuffles was killed instantly and the player character soon after. Each time the game reloaded, the deathclaw would reappear, a spectral executioner determined to repeat the massacre over and over. On the third reload, the player finally turned and darted back into the shack. When they ventured outside again, the deathclaw was gone, but so was Snuffles, left slumped over and lifeless. Probably traumatised by the event, the player confessed they hadn't returned to Sloan since. To be honest, if that had happened to me, I don't know if I'd have gone back either. Still in 2011, among the creepier tales that players shared online, some players reported their player character blacking out while exploring, hearing eerie, garbled ghoul noises, only to reawaken somewhere entirely different in the Mojave. The story goes that a player would be roaming and suddenly their screen would fade to black. Moments later, strange distorted sounds would echo like something clawing from just beyond the grave. When they regained control, it was dark, the once familiar landscape made foreign by the transition to night. Reports of this unsettling occurrence filled forums with players describing the experience as disorientating and, above all, inexplicably terrifying. The whole event seemed to be tied to the Character Backgrounds mod, an incredibly popular add-on that gives each player character a unique backstory. While that might sound harmless, this mod inadvertently set up one of New Vegas's most unnerving bugs. Players took a look at the files hoping to unearth the cause and soon discovered it had to do with the mod's Form ID conflicts. Form IDs are crucial identifiers within the game, allowing Fallout New Vegas to recognise each object, sound, or even a mod as unique. But when two items share the same Form ID, things can get complicated. The mod's ID overlaps with IDs in Fallout's core file, so the game doesn't know which version to prioritise, and that confusion manifests as random blackouts, ghastly sounds, and nightfall scenes straight from a horror film. The situation was only made more curious by the different theories floating through forums, with players speculating that New Vegas had intentionally hidden something spooky. Could it be a Wild Wasteland Easter egg, or maybe remnants of scrapped supernatural quests? Some even wondered if this glitch was intentional, a strange, silent homage to the game's dark humour. Blacking out and hearing ghoul noises in the middle of nowhere is terrifying, one player wrote. It feels like the game itself is haunted. Another recalled encountering the bug while wandering Vault 22, convinced that they'd triggered some hidden quest because of how well it fit with the ominous plant-infested vault atmosphere. Of course, the fix turned out to be far less mysterious. For those still brave enough to confront this glitch head-on, using FNV Edit to change the form IDs and character backgrounds was the solution, allowing players to eliminate the conflict. Fans discovered they could also simply disable the mod or try isolating other conflicting mods if they wanted to maintain some customizations without suffering through eerie blackouts. While a resolution brought back the familiar Mojave peace, the legend of this glitch lingered in gaming circles, a ghost story among modders and longtime fans. Looking back now, it's fun to remember how wild some theories got. At the time, it wasn't common knowledge what the cause of the glitch was, so players were left with just their imaginations to explain this haunted experience. According to the Fallout wiki, the blackout and ghoul glitch became one of the better known bugs in New Vegas, especially as the forums filled with these tales. I'm sure many fans like me reminisce about the thrill and unsettling feeling of coming across these kinds of posts. In 2012, a player had an odd experience in New Vegas that started off as a regular playthrough, travelling from Nipton to Novak, dealing with the Viper gang along the way. Over-encumbered and struggling through the pass, they were suddenly attacked by a gang member wielding a knife. Out of nowhere, the Chosen One appeared brandishing a machine gun. The player attempted to interact, but before they could engage, the Chosen One eliminated the gang member and disappeared just as quickly as he had arrived. His machine gun's sound lingered, but the character was gone. Repeated attempts to recreate the encounter led to nothing, leaving the player wondering if this strange NPC was tied to mods or the Wild Wasteland perk. This encounter wasn't unique, as another player years later in 2021 shared a similar experience. While playing with mods like the New Millennia weapons and more perks suite, the player had a run-in with the Chosen One as well. The event unfolded as they were hunting ants between the outpost and Nipton, trying to level up. With the Wild Wasteland perk and the Destiny Gambler perk active, they saw a friendly NPC in power armour armed with a minigun appear suddenly in the heat of combat. This figure, also named the Chosen One, swiftly killed the ants before disappearing without a trace. This second player, like the first, couldn't trigger the event again. Both encounters share a similarly mysterious, unpredictable and unrepeatable nature, and there's the possibility that the Chosen One's appearance in these cases is linked to specific mods and perks, like Destiny Gambler and Wild Wasteland, but because the incidents couldn't be replicated, it's hard to know for sure. In any case, they're brilliant tales. In the winter of 2012, a haunting rumour circulated among New Vegas players about an unsettling discovery in Gibson's scrapyard, not far from Novak. One player claimed to have stumbled upon a grim scene that turned the scrapyard into a place of eerie mystery and possibly hidden sorrow. Tucked away in a small forgotten shack called Gibson's Shack, behind the scrapyard's rusted hulks and piles of salvaged metal, they found skeletal remains. Remains that the player felt had to be those of Mrs. Gibson's long-lost husband, still surrounded by empty bottles and syringes. Players who encountered the shack interacting in forums described feeling as though they'd stumbled upon a secret kept hidden from the rest of the Mojave. Whether a spooky coincidence or intentional storytelling, the notion that Mrs. Gibson's husband remains there, long past but forever stuck in his final moments, gives the scrapyard a spooky, haunted vibe. And as if the rumours about Mrs. Gibson's husband's body just lying out there in the vicinity of her home weren't enough, theories of an even darker mystery were discussed as recently as 2023, casting Old Lady Gibson herself in a far more ominous light. The chilling question surfaced: what if the woman known as Old Lady Gibson isn't the real Old Lady Gibson at all? Going back to the skeleton in the shack, what if the skeleton in Gibson's shack isn't Mr. Gibson, and if it's not Mr. Gibson, then who might it have been? It's this sinister detail that sparked the theory. What if the body in Gibson's shack is Old Lady Gibson herself? If the body in Gibson's shack is the real Gibson, then who's the woman currently running the scrapyard? Some players believe she could be an impostor, someone who stumbled upon the scene, assumed Gibson's identity and set up shop as the scrapyard's new matriarch. With an inventory ripe for profit and no one around to question her claim, the theory goes Old Lady Gibson might have simply seized an opportunity too perfect to pass up. The game doesn't confirm or deny this theory, but the eerie sense of something off lingers at the scrapyard and the shack. Is this all just coincidence, or did the developers leave this vagueness intentionally, encouraging players to create their own narratives? Until someone finds proof, the mystery will remain. But for those who have encountered both the scrapyard and the shack, a chilling thought may linger that the Mojave's friendly junk vendor might just be hiding a darker past. Now, during your exploration of the Mojave wasteland, you will have come across strange, unsettling sounds, howls, hisses, or a persistent buzzing that always seems to emanate from a distance. One player way back in May of 2011 noted hearing these sounds while looking toward the north during their travels, sparking curiosity about whether these noises are simply part of the game's atmospheric design, or if they come from an actual in-game source. In the discussions online at the time, many players speculated that these eerie noises are simply part of the game's environmental audio designed to enhance the desolate and hostile feel of the wasteland. Random howls from coyotes or distant gunfire aren't uncommon, and this unpredictability adds an extra layer of tension while you explore. Some suggested that these sounds may even be a bit of developer humour or an effort to mimic the effects of lingering radiation, adding to the atmosphere without any direct narrative significance. But, as is often the case with New Vegas, things may not be that simple. One player was convinced they heard a distinct buzzing sound near Goodsprings and spent a frustrating amount of time trying to pinpoint the source, only to conclude that it was part of the game's audio design, though they never found a clear explanation. Of course, New Vegas is also home to Wild Wasteland encounters, so some players wondered if these sounds could be tied to those quirky hidden events. However, most agreed that in this case the eerie sounds are likely just part of the game's environmental design, or perhaps a bug related to companions like EDE. In 2014, a player posted their observation of a peculiar symbol on the doors of Gomorrah, one of the main casinos in the New Vegas Strip, which closely resembles the Freemason iconography. This sparked curiosity on forums at the time, where discussions hovered around the potential meaning behind this design choice. Given the Freemasons' long association with secrecy power and shadowy influence, it's hard not to draw parallels to some of the underlying themes in Fallout New Vegas, particularly when considering the city's corrupt, war-torn history and the battle for its control by competing factions. This symbol, whether an intentional Easter egg or a coincidence, clearly stirred up curiosity. The casino itself is known for its shady dealings, and Gomorrah's sordid reputation fits well with the cultural narratives of secret societies pulling the strings behind the scenes. The symbol, resembling the iconic square and compass of the Freemasons, feels like a subtle nod to the clandestine nature of power, inviting players to question just how much of New Vegas's future is manipulated by unseen hands. While the game never directly references Freemasonry, symbols like this seemed to spark the imagination of some eagle-eyed players by tapping into real-world conjectures about secret societies. To add fuel to the fire, there's graffiti at Vault 3 referencing Marduk and the number 666. But what is Marduk, I hear you ask? Marduk is an ancient deity from Babylonian mythology, often associated with kingship, creation, and war. In occult lore and modern conspiratorial circles, Marduk is sometimes linked to darker interpretations, representing a primordial force of power and control, a fitting connection for the twisted allegiances and power plays within New Vegas. The reference to 666 alongside Marduk evokes a sense of malevolent influence, hinting at forces beyond human understanding that govern and manipulate events in the Mojave. So what's the connection to Freemasonry? Well, and I must say that this is unsubstantiated rumours discussed in various places around the internet. Marduk is rumoured to be the deity worshipped by the highest echelons of the Freemasons, a symbol of immense power that operates behind layers of secrecy. In New Vegas, the appearance of a symbol resembling the Freemason square and compass on the doors of Gomorrah, paired with graffiti referencing Marduk and the ominous 666 in Vault 3, feels like an eerie nod to these real-world speculations about secret societies. Were the developers trying to say something by including these details? Was it an in-joke to cause a stir with players who might make the connection between obscure details hidden in different areas of the map? We will probably never know, and that's part of the fun. This next story from January 2016 takes us into the real world and recounts a mysterious Fallout forum that existed or apparently existed several years ago, possibly related to either Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas. The forum, while visually normal and active, had a peculiar aspect. All avatars apparently were real-life pictures, which led to suspicions of it being a scam site, potentially aiming to steal personal information. The unsettling nature of the forum and the avatar imagery made it feel eerie and disconcerting for users. One particular post stood out, describing a dark-haired girl with disturbing contact lenses, adding to the overall sense of unease. Despite attempts to dig deeper into the origins of the forum, no substantial traces remained. The name GameFallout.com was suggested, but that is now defunct with no archived material available on the Wayback Machine. So, was this a real forum? Will there ever be a trace found of it? If you have the answers or were a part of this vanished community, let me know down below. And with that, let's move on to the next story. In July 2018, a user shared a strange experience while playing New Vegas in the Honest Hearts add-on. As they traversed the trail to Dead Horse Camp, they noticed unsettling drawings on the canyon walls. Soon after, the player's character developed oversized, almost deathclaw-like hands. The glitch disturbed the player deeply, and the sensation of growing hands persisted every time they saw the drawings. Although they eventually fixed the glitch, which is of course well known nowadays, the eerie feeling remained, leading the player to avoid looking at the canyon drawings again. They speculated that the bug might have been intentional, possibly an eerie inclusion by the devs given the strange nature of the area's artwork. Another user at the time confirmed the hand glitch was somewhat common, even affecting companions like Boone. They also mentioned a mod called Dust, which adds an invincible monster that pursues players through Zion, inspired by the cave drawings. Though the hand glitch is absolutely an unintended bug that's well known nowadays, its disturbing effects, combined with the already eerie cave paintings, clearly left the player unnerved. As is clear from the last story, players are no strangers to glitches in New Vegas, but some glitches become something much more memorable, like one player's story of the mysterious and ever-present Scorpion Bro shared with the world in 2013. After creating a new character and stepping outside of Doc Mitchell's house in Goodsprings, this player immediately encountered a dead bark scorpion glitching out in the hills. It stood unnaturally upright on its tail, jittering like some kind of nightmarish totem. At first, the scorpion seemed like a creepy one-off glitch until it started appearing in every new area. Sometimes it would disappear for a while, giving the player hope that it had finally gone, but then, through the player's Gauss rifle's telescope, there it was again, just lurking in the distance. The scorpion's persistence became unnerving, following the player through the wasteland. Even in death, when the player was killed and launched through the air by enemies, they would always land near the scorpion, as if it was keeping watch. Over time, the player's fear dissipated. The scorpion, now affectionately dubbed Scorpion Bro, became a strange sort of companion. Always there, always watching. Whether it was by chance or fate, Scorpion Bro was even present for the final battle at Hoover Dam apparently, standing at the front of the army of securitrons as if it was their leader. Whether this story is true or not, it's certainly an entertaining campfire tale to add to the collection. Some more recent reports in 2023 from players who dared to venture into the old Sunset Sarsaparilla factory tell of unsettling encounters in the factory's loading bay. By all accounts, the room seems alive with some invisible force. Players claim that crates teeter and drop from shelves as though shoved by an unseen hand. Bottles roll across the floor, clinking ominously in the still air. Some who linger too long report a strange sense of being watched, moments before a bottle suddenly sails across the room, smashing near them or landing squarely at their feet. Players sharing tales swear they've heard a low, eerie hum rising from the depths of the factory floor. More than one player has darted out of the loading bay after an inexplicable noise. A sharp scrape, a bang, the unmistakable sound of something heavy shifting behind them when the room was empty only seconds before. One player claimed he barely dodged a falling crate crashing to the ground inches from his head as he'd passed beneath a high stack. There's even video evidence of this happening, which begs the question, was this manipulated? Or is it an actual in-game paranormal event? Moving away from the spooky to the theoretical, in 2024 a player noticed a particularly chilling detail hidden in Searchlight. A sign that reads, "Bingo every Tuesday night," alongside a fragmented Bible quote. Now, as you'll know, or maybe you don't know, Searchlight became a ghoulified nightmare. While becoming a ghoul is pretty obviously a traumatic, mind-altering experience, some players pointed out that the idea of playing bingo eternally every Tuesday night could be seen as even darker. One user joked that such a fate would be a punishment befitting the lowest levels of hell, where chaos reigns as multiple players simultaneously claim victory. What makes this detail even more intriguing is that some players believe a ghoul soldier may have reworked the sign, cleverly forming the Bible quote out of the missing letters. The sharp eye of the community also noticed that the L in the sign was actually an upside down T, further hinting at the hand of someone attempting to infuse meaning into the randomness. So, is this a carefully crafted in-joke from the devs, or simply a bunch of details that players have conflated into something that was never intended? You'll have to decide that one for yourself. Sometimes the discussions around New Vegas Online are about the simple, honest-to-goodness, eerie feelings some of the spaces in the game can inspire. And with that being said, few locations evoke the same unsettling feeling, especially for me, as the Lucky 38 Cocktail Lounge. Players often describe it as one of the creepiest rooms in the game. Its eeriness stems from a combination of factors: the empty space, the lifeless atmosphere, and the haunting ambient wind sounds that echo through the room. Although it's a well-preserved remnant of pre-war luxury, there's no sign of life. Just the sound of wind and the unsettling quiet of the casino floor frozen in time. The sense of isolation is magnified because companions aren't allowed in the room, leaving players alone in an immaculate, untouched space that feels strangely abandoned. Some liken the experience to stepping into a liminal space, a place that feels like it exists between worlds, neither fully alive nor entirely desolate. This feeling of unease is reinforced by the fact that while the room appears pristine, it's also devoid of human presence, adding to the haunting atmosphere. While many players recognise the lounge as a place of luxury, it ultimately serves no grand purpose in the game beyond finding a snow globe and collecting caps. The disconnect between its apparent importance and its true emptiness adds to this creepy aura. It's a place I don't want to spend too much time in, that's for sure. In a recent New Vegas discussion on Steam that took place in July 2024, a player shared a baffling experience after playing through a modded version of the game. Using the Doctor Who mod Fallout Who Vegas, which allows the player to teleport randomly to various in-game cells with the Tardis, and I must stress, actual in-game cells, not modded cells, they landed in a strange version of Doc Mitchell's house, only it was incomplete and exiting through a door led to an eerie cave. The cave wasn't any familiar area from the Mojave Wasteland, but instead seemed to have odd teleportation mechanics and a blinking effect, something the player hadn't encountered before in all their years of playing the game. Seeking answers, they turned to the Steam forums hoping someone more knowledgeable might identify the mysterious location. One user suggested that the player use FNV Edit, a tool to inspect the game's files to find the ID of the cell. This user theorised that it might be Abandoned Usonian Home 1, a template cell used during development which would explain the unusual appearance in Dead End Cave. Another noted that the interior of the house resembled Novak House 2, but was perplexed as to why it would appear in a cave. They suspected it was leftover content from the Doctor Who mod, or perhaps that the player had unwittingly created a modded location themselves, which the player strongly denied. And yet another commenter playfully chimed in, suggesting it might be part of a new ARG, an alternate reality game, though the original poster insisted they were just as confused as everyone else. In the end, it remains unclear whether the strange cell was a hidden Easter egg within the mod itself or an overlooked piece of beta content from the original game, or simply a weird glitch caused by the TARDIS's random teleportation function. Despite the community's efforts, the mystery lingers and no definitive answer has been found. In a curious incident reported by a player on Reddit in 2014, a spooky Easter egg involving a playground, a teddy bear, and eerie sounds left the New Vegas community puzzled. After finishing the Lonesome Road DLC, the player explored an area between Prim and Canyon Wreckage where they found a playground with a teddy bear sitting on a slide. Approaching the teddy bear triggered unsettling music described as horror movie-like, followed by demonic chanting when they walked towards the scenic overlook. Despite efforts to reproduce the event through reloading saves and revisiting the location, the player was unable to trigger the creepy event again. Others chimed in, some reporting similar experiences. While there were no official explanations in the game's files or by the developers, the incident remains a chilling and mysterious encounter for the player, which sparked ongoing speculation and attempts to find a pattern. Will that ever happen? Who knows? But I'll be watching out in case it does. In a post on the New Vegas subreddit in 2023, a player shared a curious observation. Why do protectrons in the game appear to be fleshy on the inside after being damaged? This sparked a lively discussion with other players, offering theories, humorous responses, and references to other sci-fi franchises. Many players joked about the idea of protectrons being some kind of dystopian fusion of flesh and machine. Some users likened it to the disturbing concept seen in Cybermen from Doctor Who or the robo-brains already present in the Fallout universe. One user even drew parallels to the biomechanical themes of Soma, a game that deals with the merging of human consciousness and machines. Others suggested that this fleshy appearance might be the result of a glitch. Some players, particularly those on PlayStation, had consistently encountered the phenomenon, while others on different platforms had never seen it, leading to speculation about engine issues or texture bugs. One theory was that the Bloody Mess perk, which increases the gore of kills, might be responsible for the strange visuals, although this wasn't universally agreed upon. Ultimately, the conversation highlighted how even minor glitches in New Vegas can give rise to long-running discussions and a mixture of humour and curiosity within the fanbase. Clearly, whatever the case is, the fleshy protectrons aren't a deliberate design choice for the main game, and the community's creative responses show their and all of our enduring love for the game's charm, even in its weirdest, strangest moments. As we all know, players of New Vegas have reported multiple chilling experiences with ghostly whispers and disembodied voices, especially around graveyards and within old abandoned vaults. And I swear, despite this being mentioned loads of times, it's important for context, because there's a slightly different phenomenon going on in a particular wasteland location which was first reported way back in 2010. In Vault 22, an overgrown jungle-like vault crawling with mutated creatures, these phantom sounds seem even more intense. Players mention hearing subtle whispers from all directions, lending an unsettling layer to the vault's already horrifying atmosphere. In the dark, damp corridors, the whispers create a sense that something or someone lingers just out of sight. Then there are random radios turning on without warning in otherwise empty rooms. Sometimes players think they've heard snatches of conversations or faint, distorted music. It's definitely a creepy experience and quite distinct when it comes to the ambient, spooky sounds that exist in the game. The Face of One, a towering securitron in Big MT, has sparked some speculation online, with players noting its unsettling resemblance to the iconic Man in the Moon from A Trip to the Moon, the classic silent film by Georges Méliès, and I hope I got that right. In the film, the moon's face, human-like, startled, and hit directly in the eye by a spaceship, feels absurd yet haunting, almost humorous in a way. But on One, this expression is distorted, twisted into a permanent grimace, making the robot seem more like a nightmare from a surrealist painting than a piece of machinery. Some players have said that simply encountering this monstrosity in the deserted halls of the securitron deconstruction plant is downright chilling all on its own, and I would agree. But we don't know much of anything about One or the other securitrons at Big MT other than the fact they seem to have gone completely insane, and that mystery is what adds to the creepiness of One. Tumbleweed Ranch is kind of sinister, and this became the topic of discussion online in 2010. On arrival, players may notice something odd about the placement of tumbleweeds scattered around the property. One tumbleweed is positioned at a desk as if it's seated where an occupant might once have sat, giving the space a hauntingly empty feel. In another room, a tumbleweed lies nestled in what looks like a child's bed, a detail subtle enough to overlook but eerie once spotted. These odd placements give the ranch an impression of a place once inhabited and now eerily reclaimed by the desert itself. For some players, it hints at the possibility of a curse, as though these tumbleweeds have taken on a life of their own in the absence of their human counterparts. The entire scene at Tumbleweed Ranch has caused some players to question whether the location is just another quiet ruin or something more ghostly, as if the tumbleweeds carry memories of those who once called this place home. Another fan theory has captivated players for quite a long time. This theory suggests that James, the protagonist's father from Fallout 3, is actually the son of Doc Mitchell. The story proposes that James grew up in the Mojave wasteland with roots in Vault 21, where Doc Mitchell was born. Eventually, James leaves for the East Coast to pursue his scientific aspirations, hoping to help people survive the wasteland, much like his father, or his rumoured father, who spent his days healing the residents of Goodsprings. Supporters of this theory point to key similarities between the two characters. Both James and Doc Mitchell are deeply compassionate individuals committed to helping others in a brutal world. James's devotion to Project Purity in Fallout 3, where he works to bring clean water to the capital wasteland, mirrors Doc Mitchell's quiet, steadfast role as the caretaker of his small community in Goodsprings. Both men are clearly healers, defined by a strong moral compass and the desire to make the wasteland just a little bit less cruel. What adds fuel to this theory is the supposed presence of a photograph in Vault 21 where Doc Mitchell was born. Some fans claim that this photograph shows James and his wife Catherine, hinting at his connection to the vault. This potential visual clue has led many to speculate that James may have spent part of his early life in Vault 21 before leaving for the East Coast to continue his work, perhaps feeling drawn to larger, more global humanitarian efforts after growing up in a relatively isolated environment. Although this theory remains completely unconfirmed, it's certainly been the subject of discussion amongst the players over the years. Another intriguing theory that's been discussed over the years suggests that the reason the Courier is unable to use the Boomers' VR training sims in New Vegas is that they are already inside a virtual reality simulation. This theory builds on the mind-bending premise that the Courier's entire journey could all be part of a vast, controlled experiment. At its core, the theory questions the nature of reality for the Courier. Players are introduced to VR technology within the world of Fallout anyway, most notably through Operation Anchorage in Fallout 3. The Boomers have VR systems set up for combat simulations, yet the Courier never gains access to them, and some players believe this is because the Courier themselves is unwittingly trapped in a larger VR simulation, one that extends beyond the Boomers' modest setup, spanning the entirety of their journey. So that raises the question, could the Courier be part of an even more elaborate program? The possibility of a VR simulation implies that someone, or some organisation, might be controlling the Courier's actions or observing their responses to the Wasteland's many challenges. Perhaps this is an experiment designed to test human resilience, leadership, or morality in the post-apocalyptic world. This concept ties into the broader theme across the Fallout universe, all about advanced pre-war tech and how it often has dark, hidden purposes. Vault tech, as we all know, is notorious for using its vault dwellers as guinea pigs in twisted experiments. Could the Courier's experience be another example of this kind of manipulation? Supporters of the theory point to the Courier's remarkable survival abilities as potential evidence, from miraculously surviving a gunshot to the head, to performing extreme physical feats throughout the game. The Courier's almost superhuman resilience could be explained by the nature of the simulation. In a virtual reality scenario, boundaries like physical limitations or mortality would be completely flexible, offering an explanation for why the Courier can seemingly overcome challenges that would be absolutely impossible for an ordinary person. Not only that, the idea of the Courier's journey being part of a simulation totally reframes key moments in the story. When the Courier interacts with factions like the NCR, Caesar's Legion, or Mr. House, are these truly factions fighting for control of the Mojave? Or could they all just be elaborate characters within the simulation, designed to test the Courier's loyalty, decision-making, and moral choices? Even the game's alternate endings could be seen as different outcomes of the simulation, providing data to whomever or whatever might be observing the Courier's actions. While the game itself obviously never provides concrete evidence to confirm or deny this theory, it's precisely this ambiguity that makes it so compelling, like so many of the most fascinating fan theories out there. Another interesting fan theory surrounding dead money is the idea that the Sierra Madre represents some form of purgatory or afterlife, with the player character trapped in a symbolic journey of personal transformation. Some players interpret the Sierra Madre as a metaphysical space where characters are forced to confront their past, their desires, and the toxic attachments that continue to haunt them. The core of this theory lies in the themes of greed, obsession, and letting go. The Sierra Madre, with its unreachable treasure at the heart, becomes a metaphor for human desires that can never truly be fulfilled. Father Elijah, Christine, Dean Domino, and Dog, God, each represent different aspects of these desires: control, revenge, fame, survival. And it's only by releasing these obsessions that they can find a kind of peace. This idea extends to the Courier themselves, who must make the ultimate decision about what to take from the Sierra Madre and what to leave behind. Some players see the toxic cloud around the Sierra Madre as a symbol of the corruption and toxicity that can fester in a person's soul. It's a constant, suffocating presence that seeps into everything, just like guilt, regret, and greed can poison a normal person's life. And so by escaping the Sierra Madre, the Courier is symbolically cleansing themselves of these attachments, making the story of dead money feel like a journey of redemption. There's even a more literal interpretation of this purgatory concept. Fans have speculated that the Courier may have died when they were knocked out and dragged to the Sierra Madre. In this version, the entire experience is the Courier's soul being tested, with the treasures and trials of the Sierra Madre acting as temptations. Only those who let go of their greed and obsession can move on, just as those in purgatory must atone for their sins before they can find peace. Whether this story has any truth to it or not in terms of the developer's intentions, the idea is compelling and kind of poetic. Another theory about the Sierra Madre that's gained some traction and sort of links back to another that we've discussed posits that the Sierra Madre is not a physical location at all, but a VR simulation. This time, the whole idea is that the simulation's engineered by Father Elijah to manipulate and control those who enter it. Of course, it's very similar to the other fan theory that the entire experience of the Courier's life is a simulation, but the dead money simulation theory specifically reimagines dead money as a high-tech, Matrix-style construct, where every challenge and danger is part of a program designed to break its participants down and reshape them according to Elijah's twisted vision. Proponents of the theory point to the pervasive influence of pre-war tech and the control Elijah exerts over the situation as evidence. The collars worn by the characters in Dead Money, which can be triggered to explode at any time, function much like the kill switches seen in other VR simulations in the Fallout series, like Tranquility Lane in Fallout 3. If we were to accept that the Sierra Madre is indeed a simulation, then Elijah isn't using physical means to trap people. He's trapping their minds, holding them hostage in a virtual world where he can impose his vision of utopia without resistance. Seems very Braun-like. The Sierra Madre's isolation and surreal qualities, I think, lend themselves to this theory. The environment feels like a place out of time, untouched by the outside world, and some fans interpret this as a deliberate creation, meant to keep its inhabitants from realising that they're not in the real world at all. So whether the Sierra Madre is truly a virtual reality simulation or not, it's a super intriguing theory that makes you look at the DLC in a completely different way. Back in 2016, fans explored a theory that might just reframe two iconic Fallout characters, Deacon from Fallout 4 and Boone from Fallout New Vegas. As the OP of the theory puts it, the similarities between these two figures are more than cosmetic, and they think it suggests a darker, more twisted history than either game reveals on the surface. The theory presents a scenario where Boone, the battle-hardened NCR sniper from New Vegas, might have an unexpected future after the events of the Mojave. In this theory, Boone becomes a Gen 3 synth, possibly as part of a memory wipe scheme following his escape from the Institute. Haunted by the trauma of losing his wife and grappling with his own survival in the wasteland, Boone might take on the name Deacon, helping to found the railroad and dedicating himself to protecting synths and challenging the Institute's tyranny. As Deacon, he goes undercover, adopting new disguises to mask his past. The theory points out a few parallels. Both Boone and Deacon are sharpshooters with a preference for remote positions. Deacon's famous line, "This is the perfect sniper spot, I should know," strikes the OP as oddly specific, as if Deacon is hinting at a past life. Additionally, Deacon's characterization as humanoid rather than strictly human has led some to wonder if he harbours synth origins himself, allowing for Boone's possible transformation into this covert operative. And, you know, while the theory does create intrigue, several responders expressed doubts highlighting potential flaws in connecting these two characters. One user pointed out that Deacon's sniper prowess doesn't seem to reach Boone's elite level. Could Boone's abilities have faded over time, or is Deacon simply bluffing about his skills? Another notes the almost literal divide across North America, questioning how Boone could even have feasibly crossed into the Commonwealth. It suggested, however, that the railroad's established routes, possibly extending as far as the capital wasteland, could have allowed for safe passage. Many contributors remind readers of Deacon's notorious, almost compulsive lying. Deacon's tales of founding the railroad and being a Gen 3 synth may be nothing more than tall tales constructed as part of his multifaceted identity. Another player challenges the entire idea by pointing out that synths are unique to the Commonwealth and Fallout 4's lore, not present on the West Coast where Boone lives out his life. Some argue that the differences in narrative style between New Vegas and Fallout 4 mean this theory is more wishful thinking than lore-compatible fact. So though skepticism persists, there is a pull to the theory that makes it, it sticks a little. Could it be that there's an unsung story of redemption, disguise, and synth reinvention for one of Fallout's best-loved characters? Or is this theory completely barking up the wrong tree? For our next theory, we're going to take a look at the mysterious stranger. Now, they're described as a ghostly, enigmatic protector and is said to appear only in VATS mode. dealing a powerful life-saving blow before disappearing without a trace. Now, this theory that we're going to look at takes his elusive nature further, proposing he is actually the spirit of a former wasteland hero who continues his protective duties even beyond death. So in this view, the stranger's phantom presence in battle is an afterlife continuation of his role, a legacy that even influences his estranged son, the Lonesome Drifter. The Drifter, who roams the Mojave Wasteland, carries a revolver, the mysterious Magnum, that shares a distinct similarity to his father's gun and even plays the same eerie musical cue. Of course, alongside the mysterious stranger is Misfortune, a counterpart who offers her own unique assistance. The theory paints her as the mysterious stranger's late wife, also caught in the supernatural cycle. Like the stranger, Misfortune supposedly met an untimely demise, yet returned in spectral form, her intervention marked by a chaotic flurry that disorients foes rather than dispatching them. Together, these two spirits might explain their alignment in aiding players in the Mojave. Misfortune brings mayhem, while the mysterious stranger delivers lethal support. In this theory, they each represent two sides of a single family tragedy. By suggesting that the mysterious stranger and Misfortune were once husband and wife, this theory offers an interconnected backstory that's rooted in loss and mystery. This narrative would suggest that the Lonesome Drifter, now grown and wandering the wasteland, is unknowingly visited by these spectral parents, which adds a rather spooky, creepy layer to his backstory. I mean, who wouldn't find that a bit weird and creepy? Originally, interestingly enough, New Vegas was meant to feature an interaction where the mysterious stranger would retaliate against players who tried to harm the Drifter, but this was ultimately cut from the game. In any case, this theory attempts to broaden the identities of these mysterious figures, and it's quite an interesting one, I think. And so we reach the end of this journey through these selected tales from the players of Fallout New Vegas. From stories of spectral companions and strange encounters to hidden conspiracies and unsettling theories, it's clear the game has inspired so much speculation and imagination over the years since it came out. Urban legends in New Vegas and games in general have a life of their own, and a special pleasure and enjoyment carrying that fireside storytelling vibe passed from one player to the next, each adding their own twist. The community has grown over the years, and so many of these legends have lingered, gathering a nostalgia all of their own. There's a charm to these sorts of stories, theories, rumours that people yearn for nowadays. Simpler times in many ways. And that's a big part of why I wanted to pull all of this together for you. Anyway, that's us done. Thanks for watching. See you next time.